Morant with a running start. Elevates. Oh, he dunks. Oh, my goodness.
Tie game in overtime. Gasol will turn. His heave is good. Memphis on top. 7-10 remaining.
Conley now with three. Count it. A 15-point lead for Memphis. And Blake Griffin gets into it on the floor with Randolph. Hard to tell if there are any punches being thrown under there, but Griffin took acceptance.
Adams going long. Morant. He hit it. John Morant, insanity.
You gotta be kidding me.
Welcome to Grits and Grinds, a Memphis Grizzlies podcast. Grizzlies win edition. My name is Keith Parish. The Grizzlies used a stifling defense, a specific lineup that Grits and Grinds listeners will be very familiar with, and big games from Ja, Jaren, and Dez to get this sorely needed victory over the Chicago Bulls. Obviously, I'm going to talk about that win on today's episode. I'm also going to talk about some trade ideas, have a little trade deadline talk with that deadline just 1 day away, and the Grizzlies not playing again until after that trade deadline passes. But in this game, the Grizzlies held the Bulls to a season-low 89 points. That's the fewest points the Bulls have scored in a game this year. That's the fewest points the Grizzlies have allowed in a game this year. The Grizzlies, whose fourth quarter struggles I spelled out last episode, the Grizzlies had a huge fourth quarter. They outscored the Bulls 32-14 in that fourth to come from behind, regain the lead, and get a victory. The Grizzlies had actually lost 4 of their last 5 games when they'd had a double-digit lead, and they let a double-digit lead slip away. They had a great first quarter. They held the Bulls to 14 points in the first quarter in addition to the fourth quarter. Those 14 points allowed in the first and fourth quarters, those are the fewest points the Grizzlies have allowed in a quarter this season. But the Grizzlies gave up the lead in the third quarter. The Bulls' offense found its footing. The Grizzlies' offense once again got stuck, but a huge fourth quarter. Jaren Jackson Jr. was absolutely dominant in the fourth quarter, played all 12 minutes of the fourth quarter. Ja Morant was huge. Ja Morant finished this game with 34 points. Also got 7 assists. And Desmond Bane, 17 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals, and a block. Also used those strong arms to tie the ball up a couple times. I love it when he just grabs the ball from the opponent. Notably from this game also, the Grizzlies made more three-pointers than their opponent. That hadn't happened in a very long time. The Grizzlies made 11 threes, led by 4 threes from Ja Morant. All 4 of Ja's threes were in the third quarter, which is kind of strange because that was the worst quarter for the Grizzlies. Here's a unique stat. Only 3 players scored for the Grizzlies in the third quarter. Ja Morant had 14, made 4 three-pointers. Bane had 6. Aldama had 3. The Grizzlies made 7 out of 21 field goal attempts. 4 of those were Ja Morant three-pointers, just like they drew it up. In the pregame, Taylor Jenkins acknowledged that the half-court offense has been pretty bad. It's the elephant in the room, he said, and they needed to address it, so they talked about it as a team. It wasn't exactly mission accomplished. I mean, yes, you get the win. Yes, you make more threes than your opponent, which is a great relief, but it still wasn't a soaring offensive performance. Their offensive numbers in the half-court were the best they'd been in about 8 or 9 games, so I don't know how much you read into that. One thing you can be encouraged about is they had this slightly above average half-court performance without getting offensive rebounds. Not the double-edged sword that stat is, because you usually get offensive rebounds, and getting offensive rebounds is good. The Grizzlies did not have a lot of second chance points in this. This is not mission accomplished with the win over the Bulls for a number of reasons. One being the Grizzlies got dominated on the second chance scoring by the Bulls. They couldn't keep Nick Vucevic off the glass. The Grizzlies lost the second chance scoring battle. by a lot. So that's still a problem. Also, the Bulls were on the second night of a back-to-back, their third game in 4 nights, and DeMar DeRozan was not playing. This schedule was set up for the Grizzlies to cruise, honestly. And it was not a comfortable win. It ended up being a comfortable win because of the fourth quarter, because of an awesome, dominant fourth quarter. One thing for me, and this is, of course, my personal obsession, for the fourth quarter was the lineups they chose to employ. And coming into the game, something very, very interesting occurred. According to me, I think it's very, very interesting. Zaire Williams was sent to the hustle. Like, Zaire Williams played for the hustle on Tuesday night. The hustle beat the Birmingham Squadron on Tuesday night. Jake LaRavia and Zaire Williams and Kennedy Chandler started that game. I have not watched the game. I don't think I'm going to. Their stats were not that great. They all had bad shooting splits. But Zaire Williams, healthy, who only played under 12 minutes in the previous game when Dillon Brooks was unavailable because of his suspension, Zaire Williams was sent to play for the hustle instead of being available to play for the Grizzlies in a game they needed to win. That's a little bit shocking for somebody that I know at least all of us fans and analysts circled him as a guy the Grizzlies were depending on to take a big leap this season. A lot of people's predictions and projections for how the Grizzlies have an incredibly successful year were based on Zaire's minutes all being much, much better. So Zaire doesn't play in this one, obviously, because he's playing for the hustle. So the Grizzlies shortened their rotation in essence. They still used a 10-man rotation, but they did not play Zaire. They did not play David Roddy, DMP. The bench was, I think, what we predict the bench to be in a possible playoff game, where it was Tyus Jones, Danny Green, Brandon Clark, Santi Aldama, and John Conchar. Now, in a playoff game, you might shorten that even further. In the playoff game, you're going to start Steven Adams. Hopefully, you're fully healthy. Zaire Tillman got the start once again for the Grizzlies. I know I've talked a lot about wanting Brandon Clark to start, and I still want that when Steven Adams is not available, but it makes more sense in this situation. I can accept it a little bit better because if you are practicing, if you are getting reps for what you think your second unit is going to be for the postseason, if you're focused on that, okay, I can accept the argument for that's why Brandon Clark is playing with the second unit. But in the fourth quarter, they shortened the rotation even further. In the fourth quarter of this game, 7 players played. Brandon Clark and Jaren Jackson Jr. played the entire fourth quarter. The first lineup to start the fourth quarter was Tyus Jones, Danny Green, Desmond Bane, Brandon Clark, and Jaren Jackson Jr. That is a getting serious playoff lineup in my mind. Also notable, going back to the Brandon Clark minutes, Brandon Clark not only played the entire fourth quarter, he played basically 16 of the final 17 minutes of the game. He only set out for 48 seconds, starting with 4.5 minutes to go in the third quarter. Part of my, redundant argument for putting Brandon Clark in the starting lineup is you don't want to play Brandon Clark 16 straight minutes. What if you played him more minutes by starting the games with him? But in the fourth quarter, the Grizzlies used exactly 7 players in exactly 3 lineups. Tyus Jones, Desmond Bane, Danny Green, Brandon Clark, Jaren Jackson Jr. Then Ja Morant subbed in and Dillon Brooks subbed in. Out came Bane to get a rest because he played a lot of minutes. Out comes Tyus Jones. So then it's Ja Morant, Dillon Brooks, Danny Green, Brandon Clark, Jaren Jackson Jr. Say what you will about Dillon Brooks, who had a miserable game and was booed. That's a big story for me, too. Dillon Brooks was booed at home. The home crowd was booing him. I mean, everybody can enjoy sports their own way. That's not my personal thing. I don't like booing my players. Ja Morant took to social media afterwards and said, that wasn't cool. You're not supposed to do that. Some people online saying, well, we booed him because he took bad shots. Dillon did not really take bad shots. Dillon was booed for missing shots. They were wide open shots. One of them came directly after a timeout. It looked like they ran a play to get Dillon Brooks an open three. He got a wide open three. He airballed it. I can understand murmuring. That's going to happen. You're going to be upset. Dillon is in an atrocious slump. He missed 9 of his first 10 shots. He'd made a big three with a little over 5 minutes to go in the game to put the Grizzlies up. I believe it was up 8. But Dillon Brooks is in a hellacious slump. Over his last 15 games, Dillon Brooks is making 32% of his field goal attempts. That is the worst 15-game span of Dillon Brooks' career as far as shooting numbers. The worst shooting slump of Dillon Brooks' career, is it related to external stresses like the trade deadline? Who knows? But regardless of Dillon Brooks' struggles offensively, we know Dillon Brooks gets after it defensively, and he's a catalyst for a lot of successful Grizzlies lineups. And so I like it when he plays. I still like it when he plays. And when you look at the roster, that's who I want to ride with. That's who the coaching staff is going to ride with. My prediction is after the trade deadline, that's still who we're riding with. But they had this lineup of Ja Morant, Dillon Brooks, Danny Green, Brandon Clark, Jaren Jackson Jr. I love it. And then they subbed in what I maintain is their best 5-man lineup. I call it the good lineup or the death lineup, or you can call it my lineup. I don't mind that at all. They finished the game with Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, Dillon Brooks, Brandon Clark, Jaren Jackson Jr. I've been talking about this lineup for years. It's been a frustration. They don't go to it. It finishes the game strong. It shuts the Bulls out. Maybe they were just exhausted from their third game in 4 nights, and their legs, they ran out of energy at the end of the game. But the Grizzlies put them away with this lineup. And last episode, I was like, maybe I just got to give up. I got to give up yelling about Jaren Jackson Jr. and Brandon Clark every episode because they're just riding with Tillman. They're playing Tillman a lot. Well, now we get this game against the Bulls, and that's what I expected to happen as far as how the performance would go if you played the guys, and we got the results. For this season, Jaren and Brandon have a plus 11 net rating when they're paired together. This is per NBA.com. If you just look at the 2-man net ratings of all the used front court pairings, I don't think any of these stats are aberrations. These stats, to me, all match the eye test. I am likely biased, so maybe they don't. But the best 2-man lineup front court combination for the Grizzlies this year, it's Jaren Jackson Jr. and Steven Adams, plus 14 points per 100 possessions. The second best is Jaren and Brandon, plus 11 points per 100 possessions. The third best, it's only played 180 minutes, so a much smaller sample size than all these others. It's Jaren and Xavier. Again, Xavier Tillman has played well in his starting stints. Also, playing alongside the Grizzlies starters is usually going to help you out most of the time. But the Jaren and Xavier minutes have been pretty solid, plus 6.6 points per 100 possessions. Next is Steven Adams and Santi Aldama. That pairing is plus 5.4 points per 100 possessions. The next two, Brandon Clark and Santi Aldama, and Xavier Tillman and Santi Aldama, are negative. Clark and Aldama, negative 1.4 points per 100 possessions, and Xavier Tillman and Aldama, negative 3.4 points per 100 possessions. The Santi and Jaren pairing, wildly positive, but have played so few minutes, it doesn't really count. Those are the only front court pairings the Grizzlies use, and it makes sense to me. What's your best one? Steven and Jaren. Sure. What's your second best one? Brandon and Jaren. None of that's shocking. So I don't know why the Grizzlies, again, don't use it more, and specifically the death lineup, the good lineup, my lineup. Now, all time, I'm going to keep updating these stats. Now, all time, that lineup has played 163 possessions. The Grizzlies have won those possessions by 51 points. If you need a reminder, that's 13 possessions last season in the regular season, 87 possessions in the playoffs, and we're up to 63 possessions this season. 63 possessions this season feels criminal. I know players have been out with injuries and a suspension, But 63 possessions of the good lineup this year. And the all-time net rating for those lineups is plus 31.3. If you remember, they got lit up against the Trailblazers. That's the last time they played this 5-man unit together. They came in with 3 minutes left, and Damian Lillard won the final 3 minutes. So that really hurt the overall net rating, but still, 163 all-time possessions, which is not a huge sample size, pretty small sample size. They're still plus 31 net rating. But the problem that I still can't get over, I guess I'll never get over, is that 63 possessions this season bakes out to 29 minutes, according to NBA.com. 29 minutes they played together this season. They've only appeared together in 7 games this season. Of course, a lot of that is injury still. But even if you acknowledge Bane missed time, Jaren missed time, Dylan missed time, even if you acknowledge that, the thing that drives me batty is that they've only appeared in the first half together. I mean, you want to guess? How many times has Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, Dylan Brooks, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Brandon Clark played a minute together, a second together in the first half this season? One time. One single game. They started together. The Warriors game, that was a couple of weeks ago, where the Grizzlies blew a lead, lost it in the final minute. Klay Thompson hit that big three off technically an illegal screen from Draymond Green that was uncalled. That game is the only time the Grizzlies' best, in my estimation, 5-man lineup has played in the first half together. They won their minutes. So it's perplexing. It's perplexing that the way they plan their rotations seemingly end up with this lineup. So in my mind, I'm repeating myself now, in my mind, that means they acknowledge this is their best chance to win a basketball game. So, because they closed the games with it. The thing I will never understand is, then why don't you play it earlier in the games? Makes no sense. But it worked out this game. The Grizzlies got the big win. Brandon Clark got his 6th double-double of the season. 13 points, 13 rebounds. This season, when Steven Adams is unavailable, Brandon Clark is averaging 23 minutes per game. When Adams plays, he averages 19 minutes per game. Jaren Jackson Jr. was dominant again. 24 points. Unfortunately, did not get a field goal attempt in the third quarter. Come on, guys, do better. But he had 13 points in the fourth quarter, was just a beast. Scoring inside and out. He picked up an offensive foul driving against Nick Vucevic and expressed his anger by knocking down back-to-back three-pointers, helped kind of turn the momentum of the game. He was fed inside. Ja Morant got him a great look where he just powered it up among the traffic. He blocked 5 shots. He is now just 9 total blocks away from Nick Claxton for the NBA lead in total blocks. Again, Jaren missed the first 16 games. He's averaging, Jaren is, and these numbers are still weird. He's averaging 4.2 blocks per game at home and only 2.2 on the road. He's averaging a combined 5.5 blocks and steals at home, only a combined 2.9 blocks and steals on the road. I don't know what the story is with that. My initial thought was, oh, he's getting a better whistle at home. He's getting in foul trouble on the road. He's not really. He's not really fouling that much more on the road or at home. It's all about the same. But Jaren with a huge dominant defensive and offensive game. He now has 24 regular season games with 5 or more blocks. That's 2 away from Pau Gasol for the most in franchise history. He got 4 of those blocks in the first quarter. That's the 6th time he's had 4 or more blocks in a quarter. Going back to the fourth quarter, it was kind of funny. There was one moment where he seemed totally gassed and like he needed to come out of the game, but he scored a bucket and the Bulls called a timeout and thus gave him his much-needed rest. And then after that timeout was the play where Jaren switched out onto Zach LaVine, and Jaren got a deflection and dove for the ball and forced a turnover. Now, it was the wrong call. The ball was out on Jaren, But that timeout was fortuitous when it occurred, let him rest, and then the Grizzlies force a turnover. Dillon knocks down his 1 3-pointer, and the Grizzlies get up to that 8-point lead and go on and win. Now, you got great games from Jaren, Ja, and Desmond. Dillon, complete struggle. I keep saying this is the nadir. I think it is. I mean, was that Dillon's last game? Will he be moved to the trade deadline? That would be sad if Dillon moves on. Personally, to me, if he moves on after the worst 15-game shooting stretch of his career. Xavier Tillman was fine. That's his thing. I don't think he has difficulty rising above fine, in my estimation. He was okay. Brandon Clark was great off the bench. The rest of the bench, oh no. Santi Aldama, all right, whatever. He was the third guy who scored in the third quarter along Ja and Desmond. Danny Green, John Conchar, and Tyus Jones scored as many points as you did. Tyus Jones had his second scoreless game in the last 6. Those are the only 2 scoreless games he's had this season. John Conchar continues his total lack of offense. It's now been 14 consecutive games for Conchar where he hasn't made 2 field goals. I know scoring isn't the main thing that he provides. He helps in other ways. He got 3 rebounds. That's what he does. He's a great rebounder. All of his lineup stats are still incredible. Shout out John Conchar and his on-off stats and his net rating and every lineup combination you can put him with. But at some point, you got to put the biscuit in the basket. Just every now and then. Make a shot. So Conchar's not scoring. Tyus Jones struggling. The last 7 games, which is a cherry-picked stat alert, but the last 7 games, he's shooting 31%. He hasn't made a 3-pointer in 5 of those 7 games. The most concerning stat, maybe his assist-to-turnover ratio in those 7 games, it's under 3-1. This is the man who leads the NBA in assist-to-turnover percentage or ratio every year. Normally it's like 5-1, 6-1. He's averaging 4.1 assists against 1.4 turnovers in the last 7 games. Is he stressed out about trade rumors or the trade deadline? I don't know. But Tyus has been struggling. Conchar can't score. Danny Green, I believe in Danny Green. And he didn't score, but that's one of the things he does. He for me, is a guy that, you know, he's going to space your floor. He's going to play smart. And sometimes he's not going to score. Sometimes he's going to go 0 for 6 from 3. But I think he plays the right way, to borrow a cliche. And he's one of those guys who, as a glue guy, helps your squad out. But the Grizzlies still need offense. Things are not fixed, which is why we talk so much about trades and trade chatter. The offense is still bad. The half-court offense is still abysmal. When Steven Adams is not available, you're rebounding rather poor. And so, despite getting this win, you have to think about making a move at the deadline. What could that move be? We'll talk about it right after this break. All Grizz all the time. Stay connected and follow at MemGrizz and at Grind City Media across all social channels, including Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, for breaking news, one-of-a-kind content, and all the perspectives you won't find anywhere else. Okay, trade deadline is on Thursday at 2 p.m. Central. By the way, please join me and John Burr from Fast Break Breakfast, also Sean and Joey from Round Ball Rock. Going to be in my playback room. That's playback.tv/Fast Break Breakfast. We will be reacting to all of the trade deadline action. Will the Grizzlies have made a trade? I don't know, but if they do, that's where I will be talking about it and taking questions, talking about it with anybody else who wants to join. Go to playback.tv/Fast Break Breakfast and hang out there. I haven't spent a ton of time about fake trades for the Grizzlies because my analysis has always been, or has been for a while, that I don't think they're going to make a move. They're not likely to do anything. If you're a new listener to Grits and Grinds, just in a nutshell, I think they're happy with what they have. And I try to do my trade analysis from the position of what I think the front office could do or might do based on observing them. And I will say things that personally I would do if there was a fantasy world where I got to call the shots or give them consultation and say, this is what I want, please. But my analysis has been that the Grizzlies aren't likely to do anything because they don't normally, or that their history hasn't been to trade for this kind of help. Now, are they at a different spot in the team building cycle where the West is wide open or the entire league is wide open and you're very, very good and you have a chance to win? Maybe, but honestly, they were there last year too. Last year, they had a walking trade exception in Jarrett Culver, and they were having an incredible season. They didn't do anything. They didn't bring in any help, any guy to play, 10 minutes in a spot situation to knock down some threes. So a lot of the talk, we bring up players who are backups, who are depth pieces, and I think the Grizzlies are happy with their depth pieces. Like, are they going to give up their projects? They have a lot of projects, okay? David Roddy, Jake LaRavia, Kennedy Chandler, all rookies on guaranteed deals. Those are 3 of your 15 roster spots. Are they going to move those for backups? My analysis is no. It seems highly unlikely. Then you have your second-year guys, Santi Aldama having a great second year. They're not going to give up on that project for a backup. They're not trading him for Alec Burks or whoever. Zaire Williams, they're not trading him. They're not dumping him for a backup. If they move one of those guys, it's going to be for a starter, someone who closes the game. That's why OG Anunoby's name has come up. All right, they might trade those guys for an OG Anunoby. But if you're not going to move Roddy, LaRavia, Chandler, are they going to move Tillman? I would think they should be open to it. If you're not going to move Zaire, you're not going to move Santi, then you look at Danny Green. Danny Green has that $10 million salary. You say that's matching salary. Are you going to move Danny Green for a backup? I don't think this front office is. I think Danny Green is their trade deadline acquisition. As I've said before, the Melton trade doesn't make any sense if Danny Green is just matching expiring salary. The Melton trade makes sense because they wanted Danny Green as the basketball player. And I think they're going to get Danny Green as the basketball player. Do I personally think a lot of these names, like, do I think adding Malik Beasley or Jordan Clarkson or Sadiq Bey, are those guys going to make the Grizzlies better than just keeping Danny Green? I truthfully do not know. And so I don't think they're going to risk that to make a move. So again, that's why I haven't spent much time on fake trades, because I don't think they are that likely. Also, the Grizzlies are good, as is, when they shorten their rotation. Starting lineup's been incredible this year and last year. Last year in the postseason, despite giving up on it quickly in the Minnesota series and benching Steven Adams, they still posted an incredible net rating, 5-man net rating together in the postseason last year. This is Ja, Dylan, Dez, Jaren, and Steven Adams playing together. You already know how I feel about if you replace that lineup and you put Brandon Clark in there. I think they trust Tyus Jones. I think they trust Danny Green. They're probably going to trust Santi Aldama. The Grizzlies' current rotation right now, with your preferred starters plus a bench of Tyus Jones, Danny Green, Santi Aldama, and Brandon Clark, frankly might be good enough. And I believe they probably think, the front office probably thinks that that's good enough, and we're not going to short circuit anything for something that might not definitely be better. You just want to look at net rating this year. This year, if you look at all Grizzlies lineups that don't have their rookies in them, and let's even include now poor Zaire Williams. All Grizzlies lineups, 2,400 possessions of any 5-man combination that doesn't include Zaire Williams, Jake LaRavia, David Roddy, and Kennedy Chandler, the Grizzlies are plus 10.7 points better than their opponent. That would be the best net rating in the entire NBA. So one argument is the Grizzlies are already good enough when healthy. Can they win a title if they're not healthy? No. No one can win the title if they're not healthy. Well, maybe some people can. But the Grizzlies are going to have perfect health to win the title. That is true if you make a trade or not. But despite all that buzzkill of why I think a trade is unlikely to happen, and why I don't think they're just going to package Danny Green for Josh Richardson or Doug McDermott. Let's talk about some of these names. And I asked you guys on Twitter for names you wanted to hear about. So I think I have every name written down that was said to me, and I will give you the blanket thoughts on all of them. And I will start with, I'm going to go and start, not save it to the end. I'm going to start with the two biggest names that have been talked about that have actually been linked to the Grizzlies. Well, one has been linked to the Grizzlies. One has not been, but I'm interested in it. So I'm going to start with the two deals that I would say, you know what, let's probably do this. And we'll start, obviously, with OG Anunoby. OG Anunoby, at the time of this recording, about lunchtime on Wednesday, February 8th, still a Raptor as far as I know. Mark Stein has even reported in his Substack that the Grizzlies are one of several teams that have been thought to have offered 2 first-round picks for his services. That is a juicy bit of intel. I don't know if it's true or not. But the Grizzlies being willing to offer 2 first-round picks for OG Anunoby, then you have to turn to what's the matching salary going to be. OG Anunoby's making about $17 million this year. To acquire him, you basically have to match that with salaries of your own players. And so I think the typical one we say is Danny Green plus Zaire Williams. Danny Green plus Zaire Williams and 2 first-round picks. Would that be enticing enough for the Raptors? I don't know. Could I see that happening? Yes, I could see that happening. Would I do that trade? I think I would. I'm also famously low on young players. I've been wrong about it a lot. I didn't see Desmond Bane becoming this amazing. I didn't see Santi Aldama becoming this amazing. Zaire Williams is still super young. He might become amazing. If I had to guess or bet, I would say no, he's not going to become amazing. But again, I'm always wrong. So don't listen to me about that. But if they said, or if they asked you, would you trade Danny Green and Zaire Williams plus 2 first-round picks? Let's say, is it a good first-round pick? Like the Warriors' 24 pick next year? And then like your own maybe 2025 pick or 2027 pick? I'd probably have to do that. I want to win right now. I feel like the league's open. I feel like adding OG Anunoby is good. Now, a lot of people wrote down on Dillon Brooks, and you could say, let's, you just said, Keith, that they're probably going to keep Danny Green. They value Danny Green, and I do believe that. And they don't like giving up on their projects. They might want to keep Zaire Williams. What if they just traded Dillon Brooks? You still have to add a little more salary to that. What if it was like Dillon Brooks and Xavier Tillman and 2 firsts for OG Anunoby? I might be wrong here, but I'm not totally convinced replacing Dillon Brooks for OG Anunoby is going to get you good enough to win the title. I think there are certain things we need to know about OG Anunoby beyond his well-documented injury history. OG Anunoby is terrible at half-court creation. He's bad at creating his own shot. He's one of the worst players as far as points per pick and roll in the NBA. He's not that good of a shooter. He's a better three-point shooter than Dillon Brooks. Lots of people are. He is not a good passer. Dillon Brooks averages more assists than OG Anunoby. I am not personally convinced that the Grizzlies' half-court offense would be better if they replaced Dillon Brooks with OG Anunoby. Maybe it's an addition by subtraction thing. But remember, this season, when the Grizzlies are healthy, Dillon's not shooting very much. You could say you're eliminating his inefficient shots, which is true. But you're also losing a guy who can cause the defense to react. You're losing a guy who's one of your best off-the-dribble creators, for better or worse. He's better at that, I believe, than OG Anunoby is. So I'm not in a rush to replace Dillon Brooks with OG Anunoby. In my dream world, we have both. That makes the Grizzlies very, very good. I don't know if that's possible. My offer where I don't have to think too hard about it would be Danny Green, Zaire, this year's first, which is going to be in the 20s, and then like a top 8 protected first. Could other teams beat that offer? Yes, they could. Would they? Maybe. Would I raise my offer to 3 firsts? I don't think I would. I'm not totally convinced OG Anunoby is the missing piece, but I'm certainly tempted by the idea of a player who can fit perfectly next to Ja, Jaren, and Desmond being available, who's still pretty young. OG's 25, going to turn 26 this summer. Great defensive player, okay shooter. Is the price for that 3 first-rounders? Maybe. But I don't think I can get all the way there. I don't think I would. Will the Grizzlies? We'll find out in about 24 hours, 28 hours as I talk right now. There's another player on the Raptors a lot of people mentioned trading for. That's Gary Trent Jr. I don't see this one. Gary Trent Jr. can be a free agent next year. That's another differentiator between him and OG and a lot of these guys. OG's under contract next year. You still have him next year. That's a big enticement to making this deal. That's probably one of the reasons the Grizzlies, if they have offered 2 first-round picks, that's one of the reasons why. He fits with the squad we have. Also, he's still under contract. It gives you options if you don't want to bring back Dylan Brooks. Gary Trent Jr., I don't see that happening. He is a great three-point shooter. I don't see the fit with him alongside Desmond Bane and Ja Morant. Can you play him with, both those guys? It's not ideal. Can you play him alongside also Tyus Jones and Bane? Again, not ideal. I don't want another undersized guard as much as I want more shooting. But I don't think a deal would make a ton of sense. Also, here's a very fun novelty stat. The last player in the NBA to have a 15-game stretch, making under a third of his shots on at least 150 attempts. Like Dylan's in a current stretch. The last NBA player to do this was Gary Trent last year. So I don't see a trade for Gary Trent. I'm not giving up Zaire Williams and Danny Green for Gary Trent. I probably just I'm keeping the powder dry, not making a move for Gary Trent Jr. And I don't think the front office would either. Malik Beasley, similar situation. To match the salary, you basically have to include Danny Green plus something. I think they'd rather ride with Danny Green. Now, one player I haven't talked about, which if you want to get wild, if you want to ask me what I really feel, one player that you can package or use for salary matching that is not mentioned frequently is Tyus Jones. If I want to get wild and make a big deal, I'm starting to think about Tyus Jones' matching salary. Tyus Jones is a great backup point guard. He's a borderline starter. But for the Grizzlies to get where they want to go, they don't need, in my estimation, they don't need Tyus Jones. You don't need Tyus Jones in the playoffs. I think there's a benefit to trading Tyus Jones as there's fewer Tyus and Ja minutes together. I'm not a fan. Like you could say Tyus is Ja insurance. Well, if Ja gets hurt, we're not winning the title. So I don't care. Like, would I trade Tyus Jones for Gary Trent Jr.? All right, now we're closer. Now, Malik Beasley. I'm not a fan of the Malik Beasley fit. He's a great volume three-point shooter. I'm not convinced that's exactly what this team needs. And again, I'm repeating myself or tapping the sign. I'm riding with Danny Green. I'm not trading Dylan Brooks for Malik Beasley. That doesn't make the Grizzlies better. So I don't think Malik Beasley is going to be an option. Also, I think it unfortunately has to be mentioned, like Malik Beasley served jail time for threatening someone with a gun last year, and I don't think that is what the Grizzlies are going to trade for. Mike Conley, someone mentioned. The Grizzlies can't get the matching salary. You're not going to trade Danny Green plus Dylan plus Tyus for Mike Conley. I'm also pretty sure if you did that, you would get worse. 2 people said Nickeil Alexander-Walker. No. I'm now reading lists of players you guys just mentioned. No. Who would he play over on the Grizzlies? Is he just a project? Are we picking up a project for free? Why? We have projects. Like, this front office is going to develop Kennedy Chandler, not Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Another one is Cam Reddish. Cam Reddish, had that huge playoff game for the Hawks and is very, very enticing with his physical skills and the flashes he's shown. But again, what player are you giving up? If you're the front office, what player that you've drafted are you pulling the plug on for Cam Reddish? So I don't see that likely at all. I got out of order here. I said I was going to say 2 names that I thought could possibly happen. The OG Anunoby, like everyone's talked about. The other name for me is Saddiq Bey. I am super interested in Saddiq Bey. I feel like I've seen a rumor that Saddiq Bey was available before, although it hasn't really popped up recently. Saddiq Bey, the benefit there is he's still on his rookie deal. So he's very, very cheap. Saddiq Bey's teammate, Bojan Bogdanovic, getting tons of trade talk. I have talked about many times before on this show, I wish the Grizzlies had found a way to get Bojan Bogdanovic. I'm a huge fan of his game. He's one of the best offensive players in the NBA, or best scorers, best jump shooters. He fits, in my mind, he fits alongside what the Grizzlies already have. Perfect pair to go with Ja, Dez, and Jaren. Can also play alongside, those lineups if Dillon is your 3. But the matching salary is tough. This is a situation where I might get Tyus Jones involved. We're talking about Bojan Bogdanovic. I think I would trade Tyus Jones for Bojan Bogdanovic. It would probably be a 3-way trade at this point to send Tyus to a team that wants some point guard help. The Pistons have Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey, and they don't care about point guard play this year. Tyus Jones plus a first-rounder for Bojan Bogdanovic intrigues me greatly. Again, probably a 3-way thing because the Pistons don't need that point guard, but they would probably take a first-round pick. Will other teams step up with a first-round pick? That's, again, the problem. Is someone going to outbid you for Bojan Bogdanovic? But his teammate, Saddiq Bey, makes nothing. And if they were open to trading him for your first-round pick this year, like the 25th, 26th, something around there pick, and you had to send them a player, I would send them Xavier Tillman. I like Xavier Tillman. Thank you for your service. I'm going to send you back to Michigan where you played college basketball. Xavier Tillman plus a first-rounder for Saddiq Bey. I'm going to call that one in. Saddiq Bey is a wing with size who can shoot and can score. He's not a particularly elite three-point shooter. He's in that 36-37% range, but he's proven he can put the ball in the basket. He adds that depth to the team. I'd be very interested in trading for Saddiq Bey. Again, my offer would be Xavier Tillman. If it was just me, I would also offer Kennedy Chandler because I don't understand having tiny point guards that aren't proven incredible NBA players. It's just a hard sell for me. But again, putting my head in the position, putting myself in the shoes of our front office, I doubt they give up on any of the rookies. Another player on the Pistons that got mentioned to me several times is Alec Burks. Alec Burks, to me, only makes sense if you are giving up on Danny Green. I don't think they're giving up on Danny Green. There's no other matching salary I would give for Alec Burks. He's got that annual salary about $10 million a year. So to match that, you got to include Danny Green. Or Tyus or Dylan Brooks. And no, not interested whatsoever in doing that. What about Dylan Brooks for Bojan? I don't see it. I don't think the Pistons would be in favor of it, and I'm not giving up a first and Dylan and something else to get up to the matching salary for Bojan. I'm not doing that. Another player that's been mentioned a lot that I'm intrigued by, and we saw him play on Tuesday night, is Alex Caruso. Now, a couple things here. You guys suggested Alex Caruso. Alex Caruso is a very good defender, good rebounder for a guard. Nice connective piece to have around. The problem with Alex Caruso is he doesn't fix the Grizzlies' three-point shooting. You saw it in the game last night. He was 1 for 5 from the field. That is a very typical Alex Caruso thing. Also, I would probably point out to you that why are you trading for Alex Caruso right now when you already traded away a better shooting Alex Caruso in DeAnthony Melton? Like, Alex Caruso isn't going to start for you. He's a bench player. He's going to be a depth piece for you. He doesn't really address the three-point shooting. I'm not really sure exactly what you would give up for an Alex Caruso. One theoretical trade, if you want to trade Tyus Jones, who might actually have some appeal for the Bulls, what if you traded Tyus Jones for Alex Caruso and Kobe White? Now, Kobe White also had a terrible game against the Grizzlies on Tuesday night, but he's a pretty solid offensive player usually. He'd provide you a kick an offensive kick, hopefully, in case of emergency if you needed it. I like the concept of trading for Tyus Jones or trading Tyus Jones for Caruso and White. I don't think it's super likely, and thus it doesn't get the full stamp of approval from me. Bones Highland for the Nuggets. He is very, very available, according to all reports. Several people brought him up to me. I'm not a huge Bones Highland fan. I don't think they're going to bring in a bench gunner. I also watch a lot of Nuggets games. They're the team I watch the second most behind the Grizzlies. And I would rather play Ish Smith person when it comes to Bones Highland. So I don't think they're giving up. Again, you're not giving up one of your rookies. I tap that sign. Not giving up one of your rookies for Bones Highland for the matching salary. You need a roster spot to bring him in. So no Bones Highland. Now, the Clippers have several interesting players to talk about. The Clippers have a lot of big salaries, a lot of players who are basically out of the rotation. And, they have some guys you could think of could help the Grizzlies. The two I think of the most are Robert Covington and Luke Kennard. I've always been very interested in Robert Covington. He has a Tennessee connection, which I think is fun. He played at TSU. I like his defense. I like his three-point shooting. Initially, I was like, let's trade the Danny Green contract and something for Robert Covington. Now, I don't think our front office would do that. Would I do Danny Green for Robert Covington? I probably would. I'd go ahead and do that. Covington, I think, has a little more versatility, can guard a little bit bigger. I'm in. It would save the Clippers money in luxury tax. I mean, Green's the better wing player because Covington is now best at a 4. If you had Robert Covington, would you be losing Santi Aldama minutes? I don't mind Aldama 3-4 with Covington. Who's the 4, who's the 3, who cares? I like Robert Covington. Personally, I would probably trade Danny Green for him if the Clippers were willing to do that. I don't know if the Clippers would do that or why they would, other than saving some luxury tax payments. I don't know if Steve Ballmer cares about money because he has so much. Like, that's a similar situation with Luke Kennard. Can you play Luke Kennard alongside Desmond Bane and John Morant? No, it's not ideal. If I'm going to trade something, I want those things to be ideal. You could trade Danny Green for Luke Kennard straight up, and it would save the Clippers tons of money, plus all the future money owed to Kennard. A normal owner would probably do that in a heartbeat just to move the Kennard contract. Ballmer's not a normal owner. So if we're doing the rubric, would I do it? I would consider Danny Green for Luke Kennard. But like Luke Kennard, not that great of a defender. That might be an understatement. He's an elite three-point shooter. He also struggles with kind of minor injuries, it seems like. And then you have, in my mind, too many undersized guards with Tyus, with Ja, with Luke, and Desmond. Maybe it is better just hanging on to Danny Green in that situation. As far as reasonable trade targets, I mean, honestly, that's it for me. I will say, just for fun, we'll wrap this up with a handful of names that, again, you guys mentioned. Jared Vanderbilt. He's on the trade block. I don't see why the Grizzlies would do that. He can't score. He can't pass. He wouldn't play over Brandon Clark. What's the point? Kenyon Martin, someone suggested. I'll be honest, I don't watch the Rockets a lot this season. I don't have a good grasp how he would fit on the Grizzlies, how he would help. The Grizzlies are set, in my mind, for their front court. Steven, Jaren, Brandon, and also Santi. I don't know how he would crack the rotation, but that could be my own ignorance. Looking at his stats, he has a concerning lack of block and steal numbers for me. Josh Hart is a name that gets mentioned a lot. He would help the Grizzlies rebounding. Unfortunately, he stopped shooting three-pointers. I mean, he's a ferocious rebounder for his size. I am, generally quite interested. I think, honestly, I would straight up swap Danny Green for him. Why would the Blazers do that? I don't know. He's got a super weird contract, and the Blazers are probably going to cut salary next year so they can retain Jeremy Grant. Would they go ahead and address that by getting a couple second-round picks for him, like Danny Green in 2 seconds for Josh Hart? All right, I guess. Do I love it? No, I don't. Does it help your three-point shooting? Probably not. No. Jay Crowder. No, we have Danny Green. I mean, at this point, I'm taking Danny Green over Jay Crowder. A name I never thought of for a while, but has now crept back into my mind because the Grizzlies have been struggling recently. Eric Gordon. Would you trade Eric Gordon, or would you trade to get Eric Gordon by attaching Zaire Williams and Danny Green? Don't think I would, but that would probably make the Grizzlies better this year. Eric Gordon is very strong. He can guard some threes. He's a good shooter, good scorer. Would you trade Tyus Jones for Eric Gordon? Frankly, that one intrigues me a lot. Would you trade Tyus Jones for Eric Gordon? Somebody suggested Mason Plumlee or Naz Reid. I don't understand this suggestion. Again, my front court set. We have Steven Adams and Jaren. I don't need another backup big, at least in my opinion. Grayson Allen is available, guys. You want another shooter on the roster. You want another player who can get repeatedly murdered on every single possession in the playoffs. Last one. Again, recap. Sadiq Bey for Xavier Tillman in a first. Call that in. I'm interested. Tyus Jones for Bojan Bogdanovic. I'm thinking very, very hard about that. OG Anunoby. Dylan Brooks plus 2 not great firsts. Okay, I'm in. I think I'm in. I don't love it, but I guess I would do it. Zaire Williams plus Danny Green and 2 solid, pretty good firsts. Let's ride. Let's roll the dice. More than that, I'm probably out. Last 2. One's a tiny one and one's a big one. Just worth mentioning. Yuta Watanabe. The Nets are doing some stuff. The Nets are trading players. Would I swap Xavier Tillman and a second-round pick for Yuta Watanabe? I like Xavier Tillman, but I think I would take, Yuta's shooting like a break glass in case of emergency, play 12 minutes and hit 2 3-pointers. I'd value that over break glass in case of emergency. I need Xavier Tillman minutes. I would trade for Yuta Watanabe. Great suggestion out there. But what about Yuta's teammate who now might be available in the next 24 hours? And that's Kevin Durant. Would you trade it all for Kevin Durant? Here's the deal. This works. Matching salary. If you send Danny Green, Tyus Jones, Dylan Brooks, Zaire Williams, and get back Kevin Durant, Yuta Watanabe, Patty Mills, and Edmund Sumner as a 4-for-4 player trade, no one has to open up any roster spots. You would then attach your 23, your 25, your 27 first-rounders, and the 2024 Golden State first. 4 first-round picks, Danny Green, Tyus Jones, Dylan Brooks, and Zaire Williams for Kevin Durant. Would the Nets do that? I mean, personally, I think the Nets have a not insignificant chance of winning the title this year as they're currently constructed. But that's a wild trade, and I might as well mention it. Would you give up everything for Kevin Durant? I don't think I would. I honestly think I would stay the course. I would rock myself to sleep at night looking at lineup data for when our top 9 play together and depend on that. But anyways, that I think is the full show. I guess let me scroll through my notes to make sure I didn't miss any players that were suggested to me. Oh, I didn't mention it this time because I feel like we've been over it. We're not trading for Gary Harris or Terrence Ross. John Collins is a weirdo name that I'm still intrigued by how little value he seems to have in trades. And that would be if you did shake up your front court. Would John Collins want to be a backup? Would you take John Collins over Brandon Clark? What would you give the Nets? What would you give the Hawks to make a John Collins trade happen? Probably not going to happen. Oh, and here's one more wild one. I'll give you one more wild one. We're talking about trading 3 first-round picks for OG Anunoby. My weird idea is you pitch this to the Bulls. We don't want Caruso. We don't want Kobe White. Why not DeMar DeRozan? Is it an ideal fit? Not really. Is it more efficient shooting than Dylan Brooks? Oh, yeah. Will it improve your half-court offense? By a ton. What if the Bulls take an honest assessment of where they are and say, we're on the outside looking in for the playoffs? What if you offered them Zaire Williams, Tyus Jones, and Danny Green and 2 first-round picks, and you got back DeMar DeRozan and Goran Dragic? I think Tyus Jones would frankly help the Bulls a ton this season, even if they wanted to win some games. This is not a full tear-it-down move for the Bulls. This is getting off DeMar DeRozan. You're picking up a young prospect in Zaire Williams. You're getting 2 first-round picks. That's my wild trade out there. I'm pretty sure I could find Bulls fans who'd be in favor of it. But like if you're going to offer 3 first-round picks for OG Anunoby, one of my holdups is going to be, what can 3 first-round picks get me in this summer? What can 3 first-round picks get me next year? Is OG the guy to make it happen? That's the hard question. Anyways, thanks so much for listening to this episode. Come hang out with me tomorrow, Thursday, for the trade deadline at playback.tv/fastbreakbreakfast. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hope you're having a great Wednesday. Talk to you soon. Go Grizz.